He spent years exploring conspiracy theories, secret societies, psychedelics, and the hidden workings of the human mind. Then something strange began to happen. Coincidences appeared everywhere, symbols repeated, events seemed connected by an invisible thread. Was it all imagination, a trick of the brain, or was it reality itself, far stranger than we are taught to believe? In this episode, Robert Anton Wilson explores consciousness, coincidence, and the possibility that each of us lives inside our own reality tunnel. Section 1. Contact with higher intelligence. Most religious traditions claim that access to higher intelligence comes through the proper authority. Join the right church, listen to the right clergy, and they'll interpret the higher intelligence for you. Then there's the scientific approach, like Carl Sagan's idea of building large receivers to detect signals from space. And then there's Timothy Leary's approach. Let's go cruising. Let's build a spaceship and see what we can find. What I explored in my classes was something different. I focused on Western ceremonial magic based on the idea that higher intelligence may already exist within us. If we can quiet the ego, suspend the constant internal dialogue and chatter, we may be able to access other levels of mind. In that sense, ceremonial magic resembles Eastern mysticism. The first step is learning how to temporarily silence the ego. The ego, tool or obstacle. Reports from many traditions suggest that beneath the ego, though beneath is only a metaphor, there exists a higher intelligence. The ego separates us from the world. The deeper intelligence connects us to it. Unlike some traditions, I don't think the ego is entirely negative. We evolved it for a reason. It helps us to function, survive, and maintain identity. It's like the hand, useful but capable of grasping too tightly. When the ego grasps too much, we see domination, control, imbalance. I don't claim to have eliminated my ego. I leave that to the mystics of the East. But I think I've gained enough distance from it to be somewhat skeptical of it. Section 2. Evolution, Conflict, and Illusion. I try to remain agnostic about most things, but practically speaking, certain ideas can be psychologically dangerous. In working with altered states of consciousness, I find it safest to adopt the assumption, which is found in both Christian Science and in Buddhism, that there's only one mind. If there appears to be opposition, it's likely an illusion. People who believe they are under psychic attack often frighten themselves unnecessarily. Fear itself can become the real problem. We've been told this idea from Buddha to Mary Baker Eddy, and now even from physicists exploring quantum theory. If there is only one mind, then the idea of hostile external intelligences becomes less convincing. So why worry? People who are slightly unstable, what I would call mildly schizoid, get into serious trouble with these practices. They may begin to believe that they are under psychic attack or even possessed. But what's really happening in most cases is that they've released more unconscious material than they can integrate. Breathing energy and physical effects. As for the chest pains, I've heard about that, but not only from unstable individuals, it may be related to breathing patterns. Aldous Huxley, in The Devils of Loudun, describes a monk who broke his rib cage through intense breathing without even realizing what he was doing. In deep meditation or energy practices, people can activate powerful physiological responses. Heavy yogic breathing, pranayama, can generate large amounts of internal energy. If that process becomes uncontrolled, it can lead to hyperventilation and physical strain. So yes, these practices can be dangerous. Experience, caution, and personal responsibility. I never encourage people to experiment with these things. I've done them myself, but that's partly because I've been, at times, a damn fool. I don't recommend the others follow the same path. I've simply been fortunate to come through it intact. Section 4, cheap energy in space cities. I think that as people become more prosperous, healthier, and more aware at every level of the psyche, we'll begin to solve many of our problems. As for expanding into space, I think we're going to gain access to vast amounts of cheap, non-polluting energy. And beyond that, I think it's inevitable. Human beings seem driven to explore. There's always an impulse towards something new. Right now, space is the next frontier. Some people may want to explore the depths of the ocean, but we barely scratched that surface even after decades. Exploration is part of who we are. And space cities, I think, will play a major role in our future. I think we'll see far more colonization of free space than of planets. Once you've escaped a gravity well, it makes little sense to descend into another. The future of humanity may lie largely in space habitats, rather than on planetary surfaces. Since we already have the technology to build space cities, I don't think we'll invest heavily in terraforming planets like Venus. Instead, we'll build increasingly sophisticated structures in space. One major advantage is energy. In space, solar energy is available 24 hours a day, unlike on Earth where availability is limited. That energy could be collected and transmitted back to Earth. And beyond that, space offers unique industrial advantages: high vacuum, low gravity, conditions which are ideal for advanced manufacturing. So over time, much of our industry may move off planet. That could dramatically reduce pollution on Earth and make production cheaper and more efficient. Section 5, Technology and Ideology. Up until now, our techniques for changing consciousness have been extremely primitive. Until recently, such knowledge was limited to a handful of individuals, perhaps 7 per century, who were working in isolation, often in monasteries. What Gurdjieff called objective knowledge was rare and difficult to access. That began to change in the 1960s. Through psychedelics and biofeedback, we started developing more systematic methods for altering consciousness. For the first time, it became possible to scale these experiences, to bring them to larger numbers of people. We are now developing increasingly refined tools for transformation. Democracy has also played a role in this. Expanded access step by step has helped humanity progress. Not as quickly as the optimists of the 18th century imagined, but still significantly. As we continue to develop more precise methods for working with consciousness, I believe we may see a genuine leap, a kind of quantum leap in human behavior and perception. If that happens, we may reach a point where figures like Hitler, Stalin, and so on no longer pose the same threat. Instead of following them, people may simply recognize their absurdity and refuse to engage. That would represent a fundamental shift in human psychology. Section 6, Space Travel and Mysticism. Most people I know who are deeply interested in space are not materialists. If anything, they tend to have a poetic or mystical outlook, and I suspect that space itself may produce consciousness expanding experiences. There's an interesting book called Space-Time Perception of the Cosmonauts, which is translated from Russian. What's fascinating is that Russian cosmonauts, despite being trained in dialectical materialism, describe experience as deeply transformative. In fact, their perspectives may be more flexible than the rigid materialism often found in Western scientific circles. At the very least, dialectical thinking allows for the emergence of new properties, new ways of understanding reality. When I ask myself questions, I get different answers every day. I'll tell you a slightly sinister story. In Cosmic Trigger, I describe a series of experiencing altered states of consciousness where I felt strongly that I had contacted an intelligence higher than my own. The question is, what was it? Was it the collective unconscious as Jung describes? Was it some independent entity? Was it God? Or even an extraterrestrial intelligence? There are many hypotheses. Most of the time, I just lean towards the idea it's the collective unconscious. Synchronicity and paranoia. But then, strange coincidences happen. One night I watched a television program about international espionage. It featured a Russian defector living in London who described a project in Novosibirsk aimed at influencing the unconscious minds of people in the West through telepathic signals. The next day, I received a postcard from a Russian scientist, also from Novosibirsk, asking for a copy of my book, Cosmic Trigger. Being imaginative, I thought, maybe I'm one of their subjects. Philip K. Dick, the author, had similar experiences. He believed he had contacted a higher intelligence. At one point, he thought he had intercepted communications between extraterrestrials and the Soviet Union. This he turned into a novel called Valis. And I often tell readers, if you found Cosmic Trigger puzzling, try Valis. It's equally mysterious. I don't really know what we're contacted in these states. Section 7. Technology, Systems, and Human Progress. Every statement exists within a system. Taken out of context, no statement makes complete sense. When I talk about solving problems through technology, I'm referring to a particular class of problems. For example, our ancestors, even a few centuries ago, lived very short lives. Many suffered from disease, poor nutrition, and extreme hardship. Technology has already transformed that. Life expectancy has doubled in the last 200 years. Literacy has increased dramatically, and I believe we're only at the beginning. There are higher forms of intelligence that most people have yet to develop. If people learn to reason more effectively and to question their own beliefs, that alone would represent a major evolutionary step. Beyond that, there are forms of intelligence linked to altered states of consciousness, accessible through disciplines like yoga, like meditation, and now like biofeedback. What once took years of dedicated practice may soon be achievable in weeks. We're learning how to make these processes more efficient, more accessible. I believe that when in a relatively short time, perhaps even within decades, it may become possible for individuals to consciously adjust their own awareness across multiple levels, not as something mystical, but as a learnable skill. The world's problems. Most of the world's problems, as I see them, come down to a few core issues: poverty, desperation, ignorance, and the ease with which people can be manipulated. Demagogues exploit these conditions, offering simple solutions, often involving violence, and that leads to cycles of conflict, war, revolution, repression. But those cycles don't solve anything. They only create more suffering. I don't believe there is any problem that can be solved by simply killing the bad people, because no one can reliably determine who the bad people are.